Hello and welcome to the episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJH287, also on LinkedIn where I post more content. The website, where you can find everything you need, dsmsports.net, and also check out Slyke, SLYKE.co, my other website. And of course, follow the podcast, subscribe on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. What an awesome show for you guys today. Really enjoyed this interview. I love connecting with this guy. He has so much good insight into sports marketing, certainly athlete marketing, brand building, digital and social strategy. Just so much good stuff. My guest on the podcast today is Thomas Van Schaik. He spent several years at Adidas. He had some time at NFL Europe with PSV Eindhoven, the Dutch football club, the Dutch Olympic and Paralympic Committee. He's written The Athlete Brand, a book. He's now founder of The Athlete Brand. Just lots of good stuff coming up today, thinking about how athletes can be really intentional in building their brand and taking that from whatever standpoint is best suited for them, and where agents fit into it, where business fits into it, and how athletes can use various platforms to build themselves for the present and the future. Just lots of good stuff coming here. So here he is, Thomas Van Schaik. I am back on the podcast with today's guest, and I'm so psyched to have him. I learned so much from this guy every time we talk. We could have just been recording this whole time while we've been setting up offline. My guest on the podcast today is Thomas Van Schaik. He is the co-founder of The Athlete Brand, author of The Athlete Brand Playbook, or Athlete Brand Book, excuse me. So knowledgeable, such an interesting guy to talk to. And welcome to the podcast today, Thomas.
Pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Excited to have you. TBS, as he's also known. But tell us about your career path before we get into the meat of our discussion. Thomas, tell us about your stops along the way, how you developed some of these insights and intuition, and any tips for folks that kind of want to try to do what you do.
Well, I've never not worked in sports, so I started out in the NFL Europe. This is a long way ago. In the Amsterdam Admirals, was there for 4 years, predominantly working with the players and the cheerleaders, doing some promotions there, trying to get people into the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Then I joined soccer team PSV Eindhoven. Was there for 4 years. Won 3 championships with the team. It's a top soccer team in the Netherlands. Made it to the Champions League semifinals. Then I joined Adidas. I was there for 15 years in a variety of global roles. I was their head of global soccer public relations. I was their head of global public relations, responsible for the NBA, for track and field, for the Olympics, the World Cup. And then I became their global brand director, making global integrated campaigns. From Adidas, I left for the Dutch Olympic and Paralympic Committee in 2015. Mm-hmm. Did the games of Brazil and Pyeongchang. And after that, I started my own firm, consulting and helping athletes build better brands by boosting their independence, influence, income, and impact. And that's what I'm currently focused on.
There is probably no one better to talk to in the space around athlete marketing, athlete brand building, and we're going to get into all of it. I kind of want to hear, even going way back to the start, how do you get involved with NFL Europe? I mean, I'm just curious now. American football is growing, but at the time probably was very much just a curiosity. And how do you go about marketing a sport that a lot of people weren't even being familiar with at the time?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, there is a reason why it no longer exists. It was very difficult to attract an audience, but also educate an audience at the same time, because frankly, we had national players playing on the team who had a lot to learn, and we had some of the NFL's biggest talent on the same team, and much of our audience wasn't able to decide who was really great and who wasn't. It was just difficult to explain the rules, explain the purpose of the game. And we attracted the audience by selling a certain level of Americana. The cheerleaders, the jingles, the entertainment surrounding the games was relatively new at the time. And, of course, the NFL and the American sports industry had an enormous head start. And that's basically what we were selling the event on. We were selling the event on the entertainment power and the music and the environment and the atmosphere. People were eating hot dogs, watching the cheerleaders. And yeah, there was some American football as well. It was basically developed as a television product for the US market. And that meant that without the appreciation for the athletic performance, it was kind of difficult to attract a sustainable crowd and a sustainable fandom. So that was mainly the challenge for us. I love being in the NFL Europe because it presented a completely new way of thinking about the sports industry into Europe. And basically, we didn't have this level of entertainment. We didn't have the music. We didn't have the acts. We didn't have the idea of the blind focus of getting bumps in seats, selling tickets. That was the sport that we were in the first place. We were in a luxurious situation where soccer was mainly the only sport in Europe that was consistently selling out stadiums.
Right.
And when I left, we did attract a crowd of 20,000 people a game. So
Wow.
it worked to a certain extent to get people into the stadium, and it was really exciting to see a lot of that incredible talent. I mean, Refrigerator Perry, but also the Will Furers of this world. I think about dozens of former Amsterdam Admirals made it to the Super Bowl in the end. We really had
Wow.
some talent on the team. It's incredible.
And I imagine too, like then juxtaposing that of kind of selling the party almost, selling the entertainment aspect, and how does that fit with going to a PSV Eindhoven and even just your experience growing up around football, soccer. I mean, not American football in this case. Like, how does that differ of like we're selling? Like, you almost don't even necessarily do you need to sell PSV Eindhoven. It's just like it's almost like going to church. It's a communal experience. You have a dedication to it. It's generational versus this new sport is more of like a novelty, entertainment. So how did you start to taking that into account of like this is different going to PSV Eindhoven, and it's a whole different mindset to market that sport and get bumps and seats there.
Yeah, we introduced some of the playbook of the Amsterdam Admirals was introduced at PSV Eindhoven, and basically the grit of the entertainment still stands today. So some of the jingles that I introduced like 25 years ago are actually still being used at PSV Eindhoven today,
That's awesome.
which is fantastic. I feel at home every time I'm there. It's still my club. Clearly, I'm very passionate about PSV, but the idea of building a recognizable program that fitted like a warm coat, where people actually felt at home, felt appreciated, felt entertained,
Hmm.
where the entertainment sort of had a function within the entire ritual of going to the stadium. It's like this is a father to son thing. This is entire families that are going to the stadium every week. Every week they're there, and it's a classic sports venue in the middle of the city. So it's very much a ritual that people actually go through. And as fans go into the stadium and undergo this kind of ritual together, the the play by play, the rituals, the songs, the returning moments in such an experience are incredibly powerful and incredibly important. It is actually part of what builds the identity of a club and the the value of the whole experience as such. Of course, sports is an extremely unpredictable product. You never know what's going to happen.
Hmm.
But the balance between setting a ritual that is recognizable in an environment that is completely predictable with people sitting next to you that you see every week, there's something extremely semi-religious about this experience that people go through when they visit the stadium, and it's
Yeah.
incredibly powerful.
And how did you start to see that fandom not necessarily evolve, but I think like at a certain point it wasn't come and see the Bulls and Lakers. It was come and see Michael Jordan take on Magic Johnson, and it became that the headline became more about the individuals who are competing against each other than the teams, and perhaps in Europe there was a little more of that generational fandom. So you don't yes you care who's on the team, but you care more about the fact that they're wearing your crest and your colors. So how did you start to notice this ascendance of athletes getting the marquee more so than the team name itself, perhaps at times?
Yeah, well, without wanting to turn this into a history lesson, basically in the beginning of the 80s, we started to get these 24-hour stations, right? You got ESPN, you got CNN, you got MTV. And all of a sudden, we had these 24-hour sports stations that were broadcasting television about sports. But we didn't have 24-hour sports. So we needed to start developing different narratives. We got into the lives and into the biographies of these actual athletes. We were starting to build these bigger than life personalities.
Yeah.
They were built for the athletes. Michael Jordan didn't build the Michael Jordan brand, Nike did. Agassi didn't build the Agassi brand, it was built for him. And in his biography, he's actually quite brutal about how he experienced being branded in this particular way.
Yeah.
And of course, there's Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman made Dennis Rodman Dennis Rodman. He was
No
a
doubt.
character, he was bigger than life. And of course, he was playing a part to a certain extent, but he did it very well. And I think he was laughing all the way to the bank. But of course, we started, building these bigger than life personalities in FloJo, in Magic, in Air Jordan. But most of the times, these brands were built by the media environment around them. And what we see today is that these brands are much more nuanced because the athletes now have their own channels. Perfection is no longer required. In fact, it's boring. It's
Yeah.
overrated, right? Athletes are vulnerable. They are not superhuman. They are super athletes, which is why Simone Biles, Michael Phelps, or Naomi Osaka have no problem speaking about their mental health issues because
Hmm.
the pressure is huge. The expectations are enormous. The demand of the audience, the 24/7 kind of commitment that being an athlete actually requires, the burden and the investment that takes is, we're asking a lot of these people. And
Yeah.
the examples that we've seen of this pressure rising and rising, they're everywhere around us. So right now, I think we're in a much more healthy environment where athletes are taking ownership of their brands. They are no longer willingless victims of brands that are being created and pasted all over them. They have
Right.
found their voice, they have found their channels, and they are proactively steering their brands and reputations in directions that they feel more comfortable with.
I kind of want to get a little bit of the background of how you came to this, and like when you were at Adidas for a large part of your career, building up these athletes. Um, how was that early on? Was there that intentionality and quote unquote, to throw a cliche term, authenticity? Was it Adidas saying this is how we're going to market this athlete, and therefore that's how the narrative was built? Because this is pre-social media largely, for the most part. Or how did that give and take go with talking to the athlete and understanding who they really were versus creating something that's aspirational for fans that's going to help sell products?
Yeah, well, it's social media came up, right? So during my time, we started Facebook channels, we started Twitter handles for a variety of athletes. We started to get them on social media, even though many athletes were kind of reluctant to actually
Hmm.
embrace social media channels. They didn't see the real value in them quite often. I was leading a department called Global Icon Building, and basically that meant that every athlete we signed, we took the plan of the athlete, we laid it over the plan of the brand, and then we activated in the middle. But
Hmm.
what we found was that almost every athlete, basically every athlete but one, didn't have a plan. So I ended up making these brand plans for athletes so that we could lay them over the brand plan and then activate in the middle. So
Hmm.
if you speak to athletes and you talk about their personal brand and you ask them, is this important? Basically, every athlete will say, yeah, of course, it's super important.
Hmm.
So if I ask them to rate the importance between 0 and 10, the common denominator is they will say it's an 8. It's super important to build a positive and authentic personal brand.
Yeah.
Then the follow-up question is, do you have a plan? And then the disappointing answer 10 times out of 10 is no, unfortunately, I do not have a plan. And this is understandable because if we look at the athlete as an entrepreneur, then I look at these athletes in a variety of capabilities, a variety of personalities, a variety of skills. You have the champion, you have the competitor, and you have the creator. The champion lives in the past, the competitor lives in the present, and the creator lives in the future. The champion represents all the coaches you've had, all the games you've won, all the skills you've mastered, all the teammates that you've had in the past. It's
Hmm.
great to look back and say, all the trophies that are sitting on the wall, right? It's very comfortable. They will never change. You've earned them. Congratulations. That's amazing. Now we look at the competitor. The competitor is the comfort zone of every athlete. There's a reason why they're top competitors, right? They
Yeah.
love living in the present. It's about eating healthy. It's about sleeping enough. It's about taping your ankles. It's about executing your tasks. It is about killing your next opponent in figurative speech, right?
Right.
It is about beating your opponent. It's super comfortable, right? And now we look at the creator. The creator lives in the future. It is looking beyond the games of next weekend. It's looking beyond 4 years from today, 10 years from today. And this is super uncomfortable for athletes because it's an extremely vulnerable profession. You are only one injury away from the end of your career. You've seen in the course of your career, you've seen all your old teammates disappear. Everybody is gone. The only one that's still there from your old team is you, right? You
Yeah.
are just hoping to make it to the next level. You're just hoping to make it to the next game. You're just hoping to be selected for your national team. It's extremely vulnerable and it's out of their comfort zone to look away beyond the 4 years, beyond the 10 years, because it's so scary.
Well, and we've
And
been
this is why
inculcated too. They've been inculcated for years, one game at a time. But just focus on on the next play.
that's it. But brand building by default is an endurance sport. Building a brand is
Yeah.
going to take you 4 years, right? Branding by default is long term. So over time, these athletes are building their brands. And, the idea is that your talent is fantastic. Your talent is making you the minimal viable product. Because of your talent, because of the fact that you're there, you're a professional athlete. Congratulations. MVP. It is your brand that makes you the most valuable player. There's a difference between your talent and your established ability to be a contender and the ability to be an entrepreneur and build your brand and build your business. And what we see more and more is that athletes are starting to understand how this industry works. Content creation, brand building, and distribution have commoditized. Everybody can do it. And now they're learning how to actually be better storytellers, how to be better entrepreneurs, how to be better content creators. And to be completely honest, they are beating the established media outlets and they are beating the rights holders at this game already in large numbers.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, the athletes are younger. They're growing up in this space now more and more. They have more access to the athlete than the media rights holders do because they are themselves. But even going back to like think about that brand plan and understanding who you want to be, how you're going to pull those levers, like who is or who should be responsible for that. Back when you were at Adidas or even today, like you have agents, you have potential corporate partners, you have your team who might be creating content about you or with you. You have the media, the larger media conglomerate that's creating stories for you. You have your own platforms. You have everyone else in your ear, business managers. Like who should be creating that brand plan, and how can we? Are we at the point now where athletes are strategic enough where they're intentionally using those other levers, like partners, like team, like other outlets, or is it really just let's focus on the owned platforms first, and everything else will kind of emanate from there?
Yeah, I am advocating a more entrepreneurial mindset amongst athletes.
Yeah.
They need to be the CEOs of their own brands. And of course, they can hire somebody for legal. Of course, they can hire somebody for their marketing. Of course, they can hire somebody for their sales. When we do these brand sessions with individual athletes, I actually stimulate them to have, their inner circle, their team, them, in the room with them to
Mhm.
brainstorm and to bounce ideas of each other, to sense check their own ideas, to call bullshit on, when they're, just thinking, wish thinking about certain key values or abilities. And it's great to have other people involved until the moment where decisions are going to have to be made. And then all of a sudden, there's only one decision taker, and that's the athlete.
Yeah. You're the CEO.
In the end, you cannot build a brand for someone else. The only way this brand is going to be meaningful and authentic is if it's real and if the athlete himself is the CEO. The athlete himself or herself is in the driver's seat. The only metric that ultimately matters is your internal scorecard. Does it feel okay? If it doesn't feel right, if it just doesn't sit right, the brand you're building, the content you're creating, the story you're building, the things you're sharing, if it doesn't feel right, your brand isn't right, right? It's the difference between branding and marketing. Branding works only from the inside out. Marketing starts with the fan in mind, and you adjust the product, you adjust the price, you adjust the design, you adjust the promotion in order to attract the right customer. That's what marketing does, right?
Mhm.
You change the product to get as many customers as you like or as you would want. Branding is the other way around. You can't change who you are on the inside to fit better to the audience that you're trying to attract. And this is what I love about building brands in the way that I describe it in the book, because I believe it helps athletes not to fit into a mold of the super athlete, but to be more of themselves, to
Yeah.
select their narrative with intention. And I think it actually helps their mental health by being intentional about the brand that they're building, being selective about which aspect of themselves they present and where they themselves draw the line and secure their boundaries. The whole thing about boundaries is if you do not proactively position them, you will only find out where they were after you've crossed them.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah.
what I'm advocating is that athletes actually think about where their boundaries are. What are you sharing? What are you not sharing? Do you share pictures of your date? Do you share pictures of your children? Do you share pictures in a bathing suit? Do you advocate for, which brands do you want to promote? Which brands do you not want to promote? Which countries are you comfortable competing in? What do you not want to do? It's like there are boundaries that athletes can put in place by themselves, and they should be in the driver's seat. And the only one they can blame is themselves.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, there's so many things going on in my head right now. Different wheels turning, and like in some ways, you have athletes that I think probably these older generations, and I'm putting myself in that older generation category of sort of living up to the archetype of the star athlete that you probably grew up going to high school and university, and you were always the star athlete, and people looked at you a certain way, and then do you try to take actions and portray yourself in a way to live up to that? And at what point do you kind of lose track of your authentic self? And is there that point where you're like, okay, am I living up to some archetype, something that people want me to be, versus I am comfortable every day, and I'm not trying to think about am I living up to some reputation versus am I actually being myself? I'm not sure where I'm going with this exactly, but the idea of like being super cognizant of every little thing, which I think you're kind of talking about a little bit, understanding those boundaries, understanding I am or I'm not gonna share a picture of my kids. So I guess I want to hear a little about the just the
Let me
yeah.
let me interrupt there for 1 second, because I love to finish this thought in the
Yeah.
sense that you were talking about the athlete entourage, who is involved with the athlete, who is doing what. And what I'm advocating is that the athlete entourage deserves an update. Now that sports has become brand led, brand strategy is a key element of an athlete entourage, which is currently underrepresented. The
Mhm.
second point, which is completely to the core of this podcast, is digital infrastructure. If digital value is so incredibly important in sports as it is today, clearly, then who in the athlete entourage is responsible for making sure that the digital infrastructure is up to date and adequate? What they need is not high end, super sophisticated, bleeding edge of innovation. They could, if they're interested in it, but it should at least be professional, reliable, structural, strategic, and intentional. And right now, what we see is that traditional agents are not equipped to either deliver on brand strategy or digital infrastructure. And this means that the traditional athlete entourage is often lacking brand strategy as well as digital infrastructure assistance.
Yeah. What is the right incentive structure within those boundaries, or not within those boundaries, but in those frameworks, I guess. And we were talking to an athlete and thinking about their entourage, even the agent, so far at least right now, the agent is primarily driven to maximize their income and maximize their revenue, and maybe yes, get them with brands that they aspire to work with, perhaps, but more so with the idea of I want to make the most money as opposed to I want to deliver this platform, so to speak. So when you're thinking about athletes, not just how to build that right infrastructure, but just the incentives and the motivations that move someone to want to build that brand. And we can talk about what brand means from a larger perspective as well. Like some will be moved by I want to make the most money. I want to be able to activate a cause that's important to me. I want to have a platform so that no matter what I do in the future, I don't know what I want to do yet or what's important to me yet, but I want to have that platform so that when I do make that decision, I can my brand carries that weight. So how have you seen sort of those motivations and incentive structures kind of affect how we think about putting together these organizations and these infrastructures to make sure that the athlete is understanding why they want to do something, why it's important for them to do something, and what's actually going to move the needle for them.
Yeah, but there's 50 questions in that one
I'm good
question.
at
But
that.
it's like first of all, agents and managers are not the enemy. They do important work, and if athletes don't have one, I would recommend they get one. So the idea that digital and brand strategy are not competing with agents; they are equipping them. Right? We want to
Yeah.
collaborate with agents, with managers to see, okay, let's build a better brand. Now, the monetary systems, the reward systems of agents usually take a percentage of every deal that's made, which basically stimulates short-term deal making, right?
Mhm.
It's like either you make a deal and you earn, or you do not make the deal and you don't earn anything. Whereas the creator economy starts with the idea of here's fans, which products and services can we develop that would enable these fans to also become my customers?
Mhm.
Okay, so we're building, athletes are being compensated based on the value that they offer. Sometimes that value is attention and attention alone. Sometimes it's also the products and services that they offer.
Mhm.
So developing more products and services that resonate or appeal to your fan community is a revenue driver that I think offers a variety of monetizations options for athletes. Now, the idea is not that every fan community is there to be monetized, but the other way of thinking is that sports is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's nothing wrong with athletes making their fair share of money on that.
Totally.
So if I'm going to, it's like the dirty little secret of the sports industry is that it's a billion-dollar industry, and that young athletes often don't realize how this industry actually works and where the money in this industry is being made. And that is rapidly changing. Every athlete today is producing social media content, but not every athlete understands why they are creating social media content, on which planet, for which audience, with which purpose. And that is changing very, very rapidly. And that's what we're trying to stimulate also with the book, but also with conversations like the ones that we're having today.
Yeah. And I want you to be able to talk a little about too what I really enjoyed in your book is that it's not just for the max player NBA all pro all star. It's really, you can go down to the Olympic athlete that finishes last in their heat or whatever. And you also invoked the Kevin Kelly thousand true fans. And I talk about how, especially now, we have all these college athletes in the States who are not going to be playing professional after they're graduated, but they have this opportunity right now to build a platform that can serve them for life. So how do you look at that sort of smaller athlete with a smaller platform to not necessarily to know that they're not going to get a McDonald's or a Subway endorsement deal? That's not going to be their path, but there's a path to still create tremendous value for themselves and build a platform, build a brand.
Absolutely, absolutely. They can actually build a brand that lasts beyond their playing days and beyond the lines of the field. I mean, if we take one step back, if you'll allow me, then what are the elements that actually make a strong brand? And
Mm-hmm.
there are three of them. The first one is distinctiveness. What is different about you than about your teammates? What is different to you than about other athletes in your position or in your sport?
Yeah,
What makes you you?
the purple
What's different
cow.
about you?
It's Seth Godin's purple cow.
Exactly. It is Sally Hawkshead, super clever lady, that says the only thing that's better than better is different. The
Love that.
only thing that's better than better is different. So you need to be distinctive. And once you look at yourself and you say, which elements of me, of my appearance, of the way I play, of how I feel about this game are different to everybody else. And I will give you this line. It's like either you are different or you are invisible. Either you are
Yeah.
different or you are invisible. It's like you decide what's different about you, and then you look at, okay, which part of my distinctiveness do I actually enlarge? Which do I intentionally showcase? Which of them do I not want to amplify? But looking at yourself and saying what is distinctive about me is crucial. The second is consistency. How easy can you make it for your audience to actually recognize you?
Mhm.
So this has to do with brand signals. This has to do with visual identity. This has to do with
Totally.
consistency. But this also has a lot to do with authenticity, being your natural self, not acting like anybody else. If you're truly authentic, if you stay close to who you are, you will be recognizable very easily. And the third is visibility. How often does your target audience actually get to see you? Steph Curry and LeBron James do not have to worry about brand visibility. They're visible
Right.
all the time. But if your games aren't always broadcasted, that is going to set requirements for the frequency on which you share content on your social media.
Mhm.
So the less visibility you enjoy in the traditional media outlets, the more you're going to depend on increasing your frequency in your social media channels.
Yeah.
Okay. Distinctiveness, consistency, and visibility. You can play around, you can adjust all three of these levers. You can work on each of these three.
Mhm.
You can increase your distinctiveness, you can increase and improve your consistency, and you can increase and improve your visibility. By doing that, you will automatically build a better brand. Now, when we look at the 1,000 true fans, the idea of 1,000 true fans is that if you have 1,000 fans who get to spend $100 with you, you've made $100,000.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. Now, if you're a professional athlete, the idea and the objective of actually getting 1,000 true fans should be achievable for every athlete. And it gives you a luxurious position, a luxurious challenge. Because the next question is, who would you want your 1,000 fans to be?
Yeah.
Who is your ideal fan? Who are you actually creating content for? Where are these people? What is it they love about you? Why are these people your fans? Get to know these people because your vibe attracts your tribe.
I like that.
You attract the best and you repel the rest. Once you start creating content for your most valuable audience, that audience will grow. You need to focus on creating value for the audience that you're trying to attract because that will attract your ideal audience, right? You attract the
And,
best, you
and,
repel
and they'll
the
be more
rest.
avid when you do attract them. That they will care that much
One,
more.
you will be able to create real value for these people because you're focusing on servicing them. And also, it disqualifies the haters automatically. Let them hate.
Yeah.
Let the trolls troll. It's fine because you're not producing content for them, right? You're producing content for your 1,000 true fans, for your fan persona, for the person that you're actually trying to engage.
Yeah.
Challenge number one is defining which people am I actually creating content for.
Hmm.
The second is actually connecting with them. And that's what digital channels perfectly allow you to do. You can target your ideal customer. You can find them anywhere they are. You can go to the channels where they already are and you can attract them there, making a digital connection with them. And the third step is once you get to know them and once you're connected with them, now you can actually ask them. Now you can actually interact with them. What would be the products and services that they would love to buy from you? You already have the know, like, and trust factor. You know them better than anybody else. They are already digital connected. The idea is the challenge with AI. The challenge is not product creation. The biggest challenge is distribution. And within this niche authority, this niche fame that you have already built with your community, now you are the authority. You are the authority on yourself, right? What is it that these fans would love to buy from you? Is it a t-shirt? Is it a book? Is it a clinic? Is it a stream? Is it an NFT? What is it?
Hmm.
Once you get to know your true fans, really, you can offer the value that they are looking for.
Yeah. I love kind of the framing too of like understand a brand. It makes sure you understand who you're not for. Like, I mean, I think if you work in sports business, you've definitely heard the old aphorism of like Michael Jordan back in the day, Republicans buy sneakers too. And that was sort of
Yeah.
maybe maybe the antithesis of trying to be everything to everybody, and as a result, you're nothing. You don't have a strong connection to anyone in particular. So making sure you know like who you're for and who you're not for, I guess. A quick tangent, but I do want to continue going down this rabbit hole because I love it. Are we past the point now where it's you? I mean, I sure there's still a little bit of this, but from what you've seen, your observation in the industry and working with athletes, where are we at in terms of the I don't want to be bigger than the team, or I'm just one of the guys. I don't want to stand out. I encounter that a lot in my career working in the NHL, but that's more of a hockey thing, I think. But like, how much do you hear that now, or is that just more of a thing of the past?
Well, first off, every athlete right now produces social media content. And creating social media content without a plan is just stuff,
Hmm.
and the world has enough stuff. So if you're just randomly live casting, this is what I'm eating, this is the plane I'm on. Sorry, we lost. Then you're not, you're doing a disservice to your audience, right? It's like this can be done better. Silence is passive branding. So athletes no longer get to decide that they do not have a reputation. They're going to have a reputation.
Right.
It's either going to be built by it's going to be built by the commentators, the trolls, and the pundits, or you're going to have an active voice in actually shaping your reputation. And I would advocate it's better, you know, to build your brand with intention. You are either building a brand by chance or you're building it by choice. That's up to the athlete.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's up to you to be known. And we talk about known versus well known, but if you're unknown, then you got nothing. And then you're like to your point, you're just kind of a silent bystander.
Athletes are paid for the attention they create.
So when you look at, and we're coming off, we're talking now, not to date this too much, but we're relatively close to the end of the Olympics. The Paralympics are about to get underway as well. So when you think about, you talk about consistency being one of those things as well, and having that visibility, being so important. And you have the NBA players, NFL players, MLB players, Premier League players that get the benefit of having 9, 10 months a year of relative visibility. If you're looking at these athletes coming off the Olympics, and you encounter this in your own professional life, even working in the Dutch Olympic Committee, including the athletes you work with now, how if you are a Norwegian Muffin Man, if you are Ilona Maher, if you are Jay Carey, how do you take advantage of that initial spotlight, knowing that it's going to be difficult to be in people's feeds organically with on the traditional platforms outside of every 4 years. How do you go about making sure that you do have that visibility, you do stand out, and you do continue to attract the attention?
That all depends on the individual objectives of the athlete. There's
Mhm.
no one set of objectives that applies to every athlete. So, depending on the niche audiences that they are trying to attract, the niche audiences that they are trying to service, that's where their measure of success and their objective should lie. So, Ilona Maher is all about, you know, radiating her personality, her sense of humor,
Yeah.
and her advocacy for body positivity and young girls playing rugby, right? Whether that is in the Olympic villa or outside of it, that is not going to change her narrative.
Hmm.
She's fantastic and she's a super talented content creator, and she will continue to service her audience in this way. Of course, the Olympics only certified her ability to compete and underlined her capability as an athlete. Clearly, it's fantastic that she deserves that the team won a bronze medal. That's fantastic. But I do not believe that her brand is going to be any less strong a month from today. We will hear a lot from Ilona Maher. There's no doubt that she is not going to disappear because of the incredible content creating capability and sense of humor and personality that she has.
Yeah.
So it's the same for the Muffin Man, although a little bit different. The Muffin Man, which was the Norwegian swimmer that loved the muffins in the Olympic Village, the Muffin Man now has, I would say, three possibilities. He could either continue to post about nutrition and food and the eating patterns of athletes.
Mhm.
He could go into comedy and pursue that line because he was hilarious and
Yeah.
clearly has an incredible sense of humor. Or he could focus on social media creation and consult other athletes and how they build their social media profiles.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is, from his performance and his ability to create content and 140 million views or something bizarre like that,
Mhm.
it's like there are a range of possibilities that he now can choose from depending on the direction that he wants to take.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
Oh, totally.
clearly, yeah. So what we're saying is that the community that you attract offers a myriad of possibilities, whether that is in monetization or in traditional partnerships.
And I think what really came out to me there too of hearing you talk about Ilona Maher, hearing you talk about the Norwegian swimmer Henrik Christensen, is that you were able to identify things about them that are not just they're an athlete playing the sport, they're an athlete competing in the sport, that you can recognize body positivity, funny on camera, charismatic, being able to create skits, showing an interest in food. Like and it wasn't just we saw him eating stuff besides chocolate muffins too. We saw him eating other things, and then now we know, okay, he attracts people that are interested in what people are eating, and be able to create content with that. So having that, yes, and almost like yes, they're an athlete, and we know them for this, and this as well, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, if you want to differentiate yourself as an athlete, then you need to be more than just a great competitor. And basically, what I'm looking at when you're building this holistic profile, I have 5 building stones that I recommend every athlete includes. Should I list them?
Hell yeah, give it
All
away.
right. So, all right. So clearly, number one is their performance, right? That's super simple. It's how you practice, it's how you compete, it's how you win, it's how you lose. It's your injuries, it's your recovery. It's how you travel for the team. It's everything related to your performance. Let's just say, for the sake of reasoning, that's 30% of your content.
Mhm.
The second one is your personality. It's the public side of your private life. Do you have a dog? Do you have a wife? Do you have kids? Where do you live? What do you love?
Mhm.
It's your personality. It's what Ilona Maher actually excels at, right? But also the Muffin Man. We want to know who you are as a person.
Mhm.
The third one is your community. It's the people and places that you care about most. Is it the city that you're from? Is it the team that you're representing? Is it the LGBTQ community? Is it female empowerment? Is it athletes of color or the community of color? Whoever it is, right? Who
Yeah.
is the community that you care about? Is it global skateboarders? Is it your nation? Who are you actually trying to rally? The thing about this is that once you pick a community, you are implicitly extending an invitation to that community to also
Yeah.
support you.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a two-way street.
Hell yeah.
Athletes exist by the grace of the community that they represent, right? So it is perfectly fine to give away and to care and to be loud about issues that are important to you, but also issues that are important to your community. Okay, so you pick a community. Personality 30%, performance 30%, community 15%.
Mhm.
Now you have monetization. Monetization are your partners, are your commercial offers, are your influencer activities, your affiliate activities. It's everything you sell, right? It's ticket orders, whatever it is that you sell, right?
Yeah.
It's 10%. 10% is your monetization option. And now we get to the final 15%.
Mhm.
And that's your free out of jail card. It's your passion. And now you decide what your passion is. If it's muffins, it's muffins.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's bonsai trees, it's bonsai trees. If it's advocacy, if it's Black Lives Matter, if it's the LGBT community, if it's knitting, or if it's something else,
Yeah.
you get to decide what those 15% is that you actually care about. And of course, all of the percentages are flexible, right? All of them are flexible. What I'm advocating is that you actually make a conscious choice about them, that you intentionally decide what your holistic brand profile is actually going to be.
Mhm.
And depending on the archetype that you select, those influences might actually change. Does that make sense? So if
Yeah.
you're a hero, then of course you're going to talk about your performance more. But if you're a caregiver, of course your community size is going to be mildly bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the key thing is here, Consistency of posting is more important than frequency. So, what I'm trying to say here is the algorithm would love athletes to post every day of the week. But athletes are competitors, not influencers, which means they are uncomfortable posting every day, usually.
Mhm.
Although that's exactly what Simone Biles did during the Olympics. She
Right.
posted every day, right? But let's just say you're comfortable posting twice a week, right? As an athlete. Now
Mhm.
you're committing to posting twice every week, which means 104 times a year. And now you start applying those percentages to all of your annual posts. And now you're creating a content plan for 104 posts as opposed to randomly live casting the fact that you're eating a plate of pasta today. You know,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you are creating narratives surrounding your passion, surrounding your community, and you know that you're going to have to post 24 times about your community. All of a sudden
Yeah.
you're in a different creative challenge, you're in a different level of storytelling, you're in a different narrative, you're building a different relationship
Very
with the
intentional.
community that you represent. Exactly.
Yeah. Few minutes left here with Thomas Van Schaik. I feel like I feel like we're just getting started. And the time's just flying by because I want to tackle some bigger picture topics too. We have a great playbook now for an athlete. To some extent, but you need to definitely recommend learning more, of course. But I want to look at sort of these bigger picture conversations or not conversations, but issues, I guess, around the future of how leagues and athletes, teams and athletes, the sort of the workers versus the owners of the machine, so to speak, the ones that are signing these massive media rights deals. How is this kind of balance of power starting to shift a little bit? And we're well past the initial shift, I'm sure. Like, where do you see this going in terms of the athletes kind of having that more power influence over whether leagues or teams succeed or fail? I mean, even especially probably even more so in the emerging sports. We're seeing what is Alona Mauer going to do with professional rugby, for example, let alone to go up to the higher level with what a Tom Brady meant to the NFL when he was playing, or whatever it may be. So how do you see these paradigms kind of shifting as athletes take more and more of a proactive role in understanding the platform and the power they have, and how that has sort of changed over the years, compared to the generations past?
Yeah, I think we're only at the beginning of this. The war for talent is over, and the talent has won. So if we look at Tom Brady, Tom Brady decided where Tom Brady was going to play.
Yeah.
LeBron decides where LeBron plays. Messi decides where Leo Messi plays.
Mhm.
If he wants to go to Inter Miami, he goes to Inter Miami. And we can all see what that did for the social media following of Inter Miami. They went from 1 million without Messi to, I believe, 20 million with him.
Yeah.
This is exactly, this idea of fluid fans, this fan community that actually follows Leo Messi around wherever he goes digitally. It's the hundreds of millions of fans that actually live outside of Argentina, outside of the US, but are passionate fans about Leo Messi.
Mhm.
It is changing where the value in sports actually lies, and it is showcasing that if we look at Leo Messi, Neymar, and Ronaldo, that together they have a cumulative audience of 1.8 billion. That is just uncomparable to previous situations, right? The media power, the brand power that these athletes actually hold are painting a picture, a future of sports that is not only brand led, but also athlete centric and data driven.
Yeah.
So it is changing the way we are operating this industry, and it is placing athletes in pole position. If we look at what Netflix is doing at the moment, then they have become one of the major players in the sports industry without buying any live rights to sports. They are building athlete centric narratives that
Mhm.
are actually entertaining millions of audiences with whether that is Drive to Survive or
Yeah. Any
Last Chance
point.
You, or any of those beautiful documentaries, or the Last Dance, or there's just thousands of them that right now are popping up, and that Netflix is doing extremely well.
Is like we talk about the Super League potentially in European football. Is the real Super League maybe beyond our lifetime, like the next version of like Kylian Mbappe, Jude Bellingham, and Erling Haaland saying, "Hey, let's get all the best players together and start our own league." Like I'm using hyperbole to some degree. I'm being facetious to make a point, but is that where we're headed? Where the
Yeah.
athletes will get to call the shots, and in these old institutions that feel like they are immovable objects aren't going to be so immovable when the athletes can kind of call the shots.
Well, who was the best earning boxer of last year?
You tell me. Probably not
I
Vladimir
think it's
Klitschko.
I'm guessing here, but I'm guessing it's one of the
But
Logan brothers, right?
yeah, true.
Which
Logan
is
Paul.
arguably, I mean, I wouldn't want to fight him, but I don't think he's the best boxer on the planet, you know? So if you're being rewarded for the attention that you generate, then the challenge is becoming how do we create sports events that many people want to see. And once you see that athletes are becoming better at creating content, we see content creators jumping into the sports market.
Yeah.
So what we see is, for instance, in Spain, there's the league that Xavier, which is much more entertainment based and less performance based.
Mhm.
So what we see with 3-on-3 basketball, it's like, of course, it was a fantastic Olympic Games, but I'm guessing there could be a 3-on-3 basketball team from the US that should be able to take on the Dutch Olympic champions.
Right.
Where are they? So the idea of entertainment and sports, where we saw this tournament that Netflix organized, which was a golf tournament for Formula One drivers. Do you remember that event?
Yep.
Yeah. So what we see is that entertainment and sports are more personality focused rather than performance focused. That the value lies not in their ability to compete, but in their ability to attract attention.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that's what sports is entertainment, and that's what really moves the needle. That's why we get some people to watch it. I mean, yes, it's competition, and we want to feel like we're seeing the best, but we're watching to be entertained and maybe to watch our bets, I guess, in some cases as well.
And if we look at traditional soccer, then what we find is that we are losing live sports by default is losing young audiences,
Yep.
which means we sort of have to reinvent the games and adjust it to the media surroundings of today, like we did in the 80s when we introduced the shot clock and when we introduced the quarters and when we adjusted the rules for sport to be better on television. We now need to adjust the sports product to survive and thrive in a digital world. And that is happening because, of course, TikTok is supplying audiences with a dopamine level that they can't find when they're watching an MLB game. And that simply has to change. So I will, sports will adjust to the new digital surroundings, and they will have to in
Yeah.
order to keep attracting this audience that is absolutely second to none. Sports is extremely powerful, and when we look at the highest rated TV shows attracting the highest audiences, I believe 96 of 100 were all live
Right.
sports events. So that
Yeah. No,
will probably
like you said, they have to, and it's almost like the star athletes have to become the star creators before the star creators become the star athletes. And like that has to
continue.
happen. Otherwise, we're gonna lose those, and it is just gonna be a bunch of Jake Paul fights and Kai
Yeah.
Cenat.
I mean, as I was authoring this book, I came across the enormous discrepancy in digital capability between individual athletes and the rights holders and traditional media partners. Whereas even these athletes that aren't trained creators, these athletes that aren't digital specialists, these athletes that aren't social media specialists, are attracting audiences of millions of people without being the world's best creators.
Right.
Some of the best storytellers in the world work for NBC and they broadcast the Olympic Games, right? Obviously, they're super talented. Obviously, it's the greatest cameramen, it's the greatest storytellers, it's the greatest directors, but they're still being outperformed by individual athletes.
Totally.
And I think that opens up uh, a range of opportunities for people with the willingness and capability to understand and service and facilitate athletes. And I think not only partners will start doing that, but also rights holders. Because rights holders without icons will lose the competition for eyeballs.
Mhm.
Icons equal eyeballs. The roadmap into fandom for the young sports fans is through the individual athletes. which means that rights holders will have to invest in actually building up these athlete brands because it is the shortest way to attracting a valuable audience.
I mean, shit, man. Like the biggest marketing win in maybe our generation was Taylor Swift dating Travis Kelce, and like that brought so much. And like how do we start to think in those terms of like, yes, Travis Kelce is a Hall of Fame tight end and all that as well, but we bring a creator, and I'm using creator in a broad term here, of course, to refer to Taylor Swift to the masses, and now all of a sudden you have so many fans that never thought about American football are now tuning in and watching every moment of it, and it's a
Now
fascinating case.
it's incredible. It's incredible. But what I will add to this is this idea of multiplayer brands, this open source kind of branding. If we look at Taylor Swift, then the beauty of this is that an individual can never outproduce in terms of content volume her community, right? That would be impossible for her. But every event that she organizes is a content creation hub. There's not a person in the Airwa store that doesn't make a photograph, that doesn't make a video, and that doesn't amplify this event and her brand message to their individual audience. So all of a sudden, everybody in their audience is a creator. And that makes Taylor Swift not only a great content creator, but also a great content director. The environment that she has created enables each of her fans to amplify her message, to amplify her love, to amplify her passion, to amplify her narrative.
Yeah.
The future of brand building is not at your audience, but with your audience. And what we see in sports, but also with athletes, is that they are increasingly looking for opportunities to enable their community to produce this content. One of the biggest opportunities, or biggest examples of this, is if you go to a big soccer tournament, then or a US sports event, and the anthem is being played. Almost everybody in the stadium is filming this moment.
Hmm.
Everybody is standing there with their phone, sharing this experience because it's just so incredibly, such a powerful ritual.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a whole other podcast episode here where like we could talk about I guess you can call it the innovator's dilemma of like the Olymp. I mean, the Olympics is a perfect example of we had so many athletes as well as NBC sending a ton of creators there, and yet they weren't allowed to shoot any of the competition on their phones because it's against the regulations. And how many more views and impressions and fans could have been reached if that content was allowed to be distributed by these creators and by these athletes themselves. So that's a whole other ball can of worms that we don't need to open today.
Yeah, I mean, what is relevant in this discussion is that one javelin thrower from India has more social media followers than the entire IOC.
That's wild.
You know, and now we're looking at the athletes that participate in the games, and there's about 12,500 of them. And one athlete has more followers than the entire IOC. That's just one athlete. That's just that's
Power
mind
balance.
blowing, isn't it?
Totally, man. Last thing for you, Thomas, for this episode's shareable stat, I promise I can go with you all day, all night. But I wanted to really dive in a little bit into what the opportunities are for an athlete today with a brand, with a platform, with some true fans, whether it's 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 or a million or a billion. We're seeing athlete-led media companies. We're seeing newsletters now are becoming bigger and bigger. Podcasts. Creating more products, taking equity with partners. What are you seeing play out in the space? Where you kind of see this going as well as more athlete ownership and athletes start to realize the power of the platforms that they have.
Uh, the most important takeaway is that it can do what they want.
Hmm.
So they can either boost their independence, they can either boost their influence, they could boost their income, or they could boost their social impact. They choose what it is that they want to accomplish with their brand. Of course, there's opportunities for monetization, but there's also opportunities to use your platform for the common good and give back to your community. Depending on the situation that you're in, if you're already a multi-billionaire, you might want to use your platform to advocate for causes that are actually really important to you.
Hmm.
And each of those opportunities, each of those lanes could coexist. They actually strengthen one another. So what we see, of course, is that athletes have for a long time been advocates. They are influencers. They are investors. They are shareholders. They are entrepreneurs. They are more and more influential, and what they choose to do with that influence is completely and utterly up to them. Right now, content creation as well as content distribution have become completely commoditized.
Mhm.
Every athlete can create content. The quality of the content doesn't really matter all that much. It is not about the beauty of the shot, it is about the quality of the narrative and the quality of the content. If it's authentic, the audience will be able to tell. Perfection is not only boring, it is also completely overrated. Athletes are perfectly fine being imperfect. And the idea of your content creation not being perfect, it really doesn't matter. You will get better over time. The more content you create, the better you will be at it. So if there's one group of people that should believe in the power of practice, then it would be professional athletes.
Hell
And
yeah.
the same applies to content creation. So every athlete should be an intentional content creator. Every athlete should build a brand, and every athlete should think about what it is that they want to accomplish with their brand. Making a plan is step one. Make a plan. Without a plan, you're just wasting your platform, you're wasting this opportunity, and it would be an incredible shame because it ends in frustration and disappointment. And that's the last thing that I would want. So even if you are chasing these NIL opportunities and you might not make it into professional sports, think about the community that you service, your long-term opportunities that sit there, and think about what it is that you're trying to accomplish and make a plan.
I'll tell you too, Tom. It's like something that's really stuck with me from the first time we spoke. Even was this idea of kind of athletes treating understanding that they are businesses and brands in and of themselves. That they and I think where I'm really getting at is this idea of like who owns your audience when you are playing on ESPN and you're playing for the NBA. Maybe it's that you're borrowing, you're giving them your audience to some degree. When you're posting on Instagram, on these meta platforms, on TikTok, you are posting on rented real estate. You have an audience, but you don't necessarily own them. And we talked about like should athletes have their own CRM? Like, should they get to know their fans? Should they have a way to sort of make sure that they can take those fans with them wherever they go as platforms come and go, as their careers in professional sports come and go? Like, how can we take this sort of strategic mindset, and how important is it for to have owned audiences, or is it okay to continue just to kind of ride the waves of these platforms that ultimately need you more than you need them in times?
Yeah. Well, I would. I'm a big fan of building up your own audience. Of course, a subscriber is way more valuable than a follower,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the 5 steps that I recommend every athlete takes is step number one, make a plan. Step number two, optimize your socials, which basically goes back to coming your plan, establishing a frequency, coming up with a narrative. Three is build your own digital home base, which is basically a website. You can do there whatever it is that you want, whether that is crowdfunding, whether that is e-commerce,
Yeah.
whether that is collecting your data, build your digital home base. Number four is predominantly for athletes that enjoy a little bit less visibility of traditional media outlets like a javelin thrower or a gymnast or somebody who's not every day in the NBA. Get a newsletter so that out of your followers you can get to subscribers, people that actually follow you. And the fifth is think about an annual live in-person or virtual event. Even if you only invite 10 of your hardcore fans or 20 or 25, what is the annual event that you could organize to engage your most passionate audience?
I like that.
Because the idea is that even that event could be a content engine where people actually create content around you, or you are capable of creating content. And the idea should be that your 1,000 true fans should want to be there next year.
Yeah. Oh man, you got me all over the place here. That's awesome. It's a great place for us to cut this part off, but we're having some more fun with you in our set play segment. First, though, Thomas, this episode of Shareable Stats coming at our listeners right now. Coming at you. We'll take a quick break. Awesome, awesome stuff. Being able to pick Thomas Van Schaik's brain, just so much insight and wisdom there. We could really have gone forever, and we will have some more fun with him with our quick hitting questions. But first episode's shareable stat. This episode's shareable stat comes from a recent study by Horizon, and they had a lot of interesting stats around Gen Z and millennials and how they follow and relate to sports. I'll throw a few stats at you, and then we'll comment on a little bit of it. First is that 86% of Gen Z interact with sports-related content on social media. I was going to say that's higher than millennials, actually. 86% of Gen Z interact with sports-related content on social. That, of course, can mean a lot of things. It can be very broad, of course. And 49% of Gen Z has discovered a new sport through social media. That's also much higher than millennials, who are at 35% for that stat. So almost half of Gen Z has discovered a new sport thanks to social media. One more I'll throw at you as well is that 52% of Gen Z say sports betting has led them to watch new sports and teams. So sports betting is certainly interesting. And 1 in 2 U.S. adults, so regardless of generation or age, 1 in 2 U.S. adults are interested in sports content that taps into fashion. Another 1 in 2 are interested in advanced tech at sports venues as well. Lots of good stats here. The last one we'll share, last couple, I guess, is 60% of Gen Z are interested in content creators talking about sports on live streams. So YouTube or Twitch is what they mentioned in the study. And finally, 7 out of 10, 70% of Gen Z had their interest in a sport deepened thanks to a fan community on social media. Lots of interesting stats here. First, of course, the fact that a lot of Gen Z is interacting with sports on social media, perhaps a lot more so than are doing so on live broadcasts. So take that with what you will, in that Gen Z is sports fans. They may not be watching a 3-hour broadcast like we did when there was nothing else to do besides watch a 3 or 4 hour broadcast. A lot of them still are, of course, but they are very much on top of sports content on social. We also looked at, of course, the ability to discover a new sport through social media. So if you are part of an emerging sport, or even are trying to reach fans that are not currently fans of your team or your sport, Gen Z is very open and receptive. You can find different ways to attract them. And then we look at the other stats here around interest in fashion, interest in technology. You can think of already see a lot of teams diving into that fashion concept and fashion trend leagues as well, whether it's dedicated accounts, working with collaborators and influencers in the space. Lots of opportunity there. And finally, the one around live streams with the creators, as well as fan communities. These are two things very close to my heart. Definitely I've seen the rise of more live streams, whether it's as additional broadcast options, especially for some of the smaller emerging leagues that don't have these huge media deals, as well as just other ways to involve creators, whether it's just a watch along or along with a different type of broadcast. That, of course, we're seeing plenty of that throughout sports. And finally, the fan community aspect. How can you build fan community? One of the coolest things is when fans become friends, become true friends, whether it's online and or offline, because they met through your team, through some sort of community aspect of your team. There's communities being built in the comment section on TikTok and Instagram. You may build a community on Discord. There's been a little bit of that. Slack communities. Who knows what can happen there. Facebook groups. We're also seeing, of course, the growth of broadcast channels across WhatsApp and Instagram. Maybe an opportunity there. How can you really dive into whether interest-based communities based on different demographics, location, lots of things here. I've been rambling on too long, but lots of interesting stats. Again, you can just Google Horizon Sports Study. I will also tweet it out. I'm not going to repeat every stat for you again, but just really interesting stuff into how teams, sports, leagues can reach and engage the ever-coveted Gen Z community. All right, that's episode of Shareable Stat, or really group of shareable stats. But more importantly, stick around because we're going to have some more fun and learn a lot more. Here's some great more stories from Thomas Van Schaik of the Athlete brand. I am back in this episode of Shareable Stat, and I am joined once again by Thomas Van Schaik. He is the founder of the Athlete brand and author of the Athlete brand book. Thomas learned so much in our interview. Are you now ready to take some set plays with us?
I'm not sure what they're going to be, but bring it on.
Line them up, and we will. You'll be able to hit them in the back of the net for sure. All right. First up, we're gonna go back in time a little bit. Tell me your favorite or most lasting memory from your time with NFL Europe. What's kind of that memory that sticks out for you?
Well, I remember meeting Refrigerator Perry and for the first time together with Sherry Perry, which was remarkable because he was one of those bigger than life sports icons that I never envisioned meeting. He was probably the most famous person I've ever met at the time. And he was such a kind-hearted and gentle giant. that I was really impressed with the way he carried himself and his sense of humor. And yeah, he loved being in Amsterdam. He was playing for the London Monarchs, so he was actually from the visiting team. But we did a couple of events together, and I was really, really impressed with the way he carried himself. And I thought it was super impressive.
Love that. Very charismatic guy. And a quick bonus to this question. What is your prediction kind of for the NFL's place in Europe long term? We look up 20
So,
years from
sorry,
now.
say that again.
If we look up 10, 15, 20 years from now, how will the NFL be in Europe? Will we still just be, still these international games here and there? Will we have some permanent teams? What do you kind of foresee in the future?
Well, I think they're doing a couple of things incredibly well. And obviously, they have a media product that is incredible. They are probably the best sports organization in terms of branding, marketing, event organization, and entertainment. I think they are setting the benchmark everywhere they go. It is a complicated game to market in Europe because it's just difficult to get for an uneducated audience.
Yeah.
But I think it is almost too big to fail. The fan community they are building, I think, will work. I think it will, I think people in Europe will inevitably be charmed by the product that the NFL has to offer. I'm not sure. I would hope that there's a way to create professional sports organizations playing American football here. A couple of people are thinking about that. How that could actually, how could we develop a sustainable supply of talent
Yeah.
that could remotely, be on the same field as the NFL. It's just, we are a long way from that. I think it's going to be challenging, but I would hope it's possible.
Yeah, and we'll see how the inclusion of flag football in the LA 2028 games helps. With the barrier to entry is certainly much smaller than it is for tackle football. So we'll
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's going to be exciting. Yeah, you're right. That's going to be a very exciting way in. It's like what rugby sevens did for rugby and
yeah,
what 3-on-3 basketball did for basketball. All of a sudden, you need less world class talent to actually
totally.
compete on an eye to eye level.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm excited for this next question. Tell me, you're gonna teach me a little bit here. Tell me the most famous Dutch athlete of all time, and also, assuming it's different, the most well-known Dutch athlete today.
I would argue that Johan Cruyff is the
Mhm.
most famous athlete from the Netherlands. He was a legendary soccer player from the 70s and also basically the modern equivalent of what Yoda was. So he's basically the Yogi Berra from Dutch sports.
That's awesome.
His sayings, his wisdom, was incomprehensible but also always right. So he was a very special man with a couple of very wise words in very pragmatic and down to earth kind of language. So he's very inspirational. Books have been written about his quotes. He's been not only a great mind when it comes to the sports of soccer, basically being partially responsible for the invention of total football, which is much of the modern football that we see played today. He was a revolutionary in that regard, but also a revolutionary in regard of his social impact. He started a foundation that is advocating creating room to play for every child, and he was very early advocating and amplifying his social impact and being completely aware of the impact that he could make. So Johan Cruyff is definitely a trailblazer in Dutch sports and global soccer. I would say that the most famous Dutch athlete today, without the shadow of a doubt, will be Max Verstappen, the current Formula One world
Oh
champion.
yeah.
It's like it's the Dutch. He's won so many races now that the Dutch anthem is becoming like the unofficial tune of the Formula One. So, so Max Verstappen is a very remarkable athlete. He's crazy about sim racing and super talented at that as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if he continues sim racing after his career in Formula One.
Yeah.
So very remarkable athlete, very good businessman, state of the art competitor. Yeah, most definitely the most famous Dutch athlete at the moment.
That is a great one, and certainly an athlete that's known around the world. So a couple of athletes that are definitely top of mind there. Number three for you, I'm really interested in this one, Thomas. Talk about kind of the state of women's sports in Europe. We see out here in the U.S. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and WNBA is taking off more than ever. The NWSL is more valuable and more watched than ever before as well. So what is sort of the state of women's sports in Europe and also among individual athletes? Do we have a Caitlin Clark in Europe or like some of these superstars, an Aja Wilson type level of star?
Yeah, well, clearly, women's sports is growing very, very rapidly everywhere. Women's soccer is growing very rapidly. Um, I'm from the Netherlands, like we just discussed. If we look at the Netherlands at the recent Olympics, then we came in number 6 at the global medal ranking, which is kind of bizarre for a country the size of ours. We have 18 million people. The reason why we score as high as we do is because that our women are overperforming. Now, obviously, that's fantastic, but it is also signaling that women do not have the same opportunities everywhere else in the world. Because if they did, we wouldn't be this high on the medal ranking. So, which is to say, if we look at the place of women's sports, then the first Olympics, the first modern Olympics, were only men. The
Yeah.
second version of the Olympics included women in golf and swimming. And these Olympics were the first that were completely gender equal. The first ever was Paris.
Wild.
And what we see, yeah, that's incredible. And what we see is that women's sports are rapidly growing. And if you want to grow your share of revenue in the sports business, you'd better wake up and invest in women's sports.
Yeah.
Having said that, athletes are paid for the attention that they generate. So if NBA players create more attention than WNBA players, they're going to be paid more.
Mhm.
If male athletes create more attention, they're going to be paid more. If the female soccer players of the US, of Team USA, create more attention than their male counterparts, they're going to earn more than their male counterparts, or at least they should. So you're getting paid on the basis of the attention that you create. That is not to say that we shouldn't invest in women's sports. Clearly, we should because it's a growth market, right? Like it's just a sound business investment to invest
Totally.
in women's
Yeah.
sports.
Buy now, get the
So
stock going up. Yeah.
yes, we do have a large number of predominantly soccer players, but also in a variety of sports of women that are growing very rapidly, whether that is speed cycling, whether that is track and field, whether that is field hockey. There's a number of female athletes that are very rapidly growing their brands and growing their businesses. Yes.
Yeah, no, certainly interesting to follow for sure from out here in the States. I know in the US, we look at Title IX back in 1972, which really gave women's sports a big leg up compared to the rest of the world because it was forced to be equal resources and equal opportunity in schools. And so it's good to hear that, we're on the way up in Europe as well. All right, next
Definitely.
question for you. This could be a good one here. If tell me, I guess the social media platform that tends to be the most effective for athlete brand building today, meant to be kind of open ended. You can take it however you want. And then a bonus question: which social platforms in general are the most popular in the Netherlands?
Well, I would say obviously Instagram and TikTok right now are the tastes of the day. And I would rate those platforms as okay. Instagram is a given. TikTok is if you want to be a proactive creator, that's where you want to be.
Yeah,
But I would also advocate, also in the line of thinking of embracing a more entrepreneurial mindset, that every athlete needs a LinkedIn page.
yeah,
And once you have a LinkedIn page, then you can actually segment your audiences. And then you can say your Instagram and TikTok are your B2C and your LinkedIn is your B2B channel. So when you want to position yourself as an entrepreneur, this is where you use your LinkedIn profile to actually um, build your business to business network.
yeah. I like that. And I think we saw not too long ago now that Cristiano Ronaldo joined YouTube, so maybe that'll open up a big wave of people getting on YouTube as
I,
well.
I, I think it's just incredible that he's only doing that now.
I know, right? And it got a million subscribers in the snap of a finger, so only a matter of time until more follow. But yeah, it's a place where you can earn a ton of passive income. He can put a day in the life vlog up there, and it could still be monetizing for him 20 years from now with people watching that. It's definitely a fascinating
Definitely.
platform.
Yeah,
Next
yeah.
question for you. Tell me of how are traditional sports agents and marketing managers, whatever you want to call them, how effectively are they set up to build and maximize the value of the brand of athletes? Or I think we talked about this a lot in the interview earlier. Is that separate brand manager it's not just focused on sort of the business side only or the agents only type aspect? Is that necessary to have, both roles?
I think that the digital world is growing, developing, and changing at a speed that it is impossible for an agent to keep up with. Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like the different platforms and the new, the range of software products, just the stack itself, right? It's developing so quickly that agents cannot be expected to keep up with this. This is where you need a specialized team of dedicated experts to actually tell you what to do. Right? This is a job. I mean, you know this as much as I do. It's like how many conferences do we go with? It's challenging for us to keep up
Totally.
to speed with innovation of the digital products that are out there. And this speed, if this is going too fast, you're not going to like the future. We're not going to slow down. We're only going to speed up further.
Yeah.
So I believe that if we look at the traditional athlete entourage, then they are very poorly equipped for this day and age and this speed of change and this era of digital sophistication. Of course, products are getting more and more usable. No code tools are everywhere. AI is going to help us. But even in that environment, I still think that athletes need to equip themselves with digital know how and brand strategy capability. And this is not to compete with athletes. This is to arm athletes with data, analytics, and takeaways that actually increase the knowledge and the value of their, the knowledge and the insight of the value that athletes represent. How many athletes actually know what a single post of them is worth?
Right.
I don't think many agents know.
Yeah, and that's why it's exciting to see, at least in the States, the growth of NIL and in college, so that more athletes are entering the pros with at least some working knowledge of how they think themselves as a business.
Yeah. I would advocate that this whole idea of selling exposure is sort of not a model that I would advocate. I believe more in building your value and actually then mining the value that you have built than just randomly sharing the exposure that you're capable of
Yeah, the
generating.
transactional one-off things that you're just doing for a few bucks is, yeah, totally with you. Next question for you, Thomas, coming down the wire here with Thomas Van Schaik, author of the Athlete Brand Book and a consultant working with athletes as well, veteran of the space. Tell me of the sports league with the best brand builders among their athletes and the sports league you think that has the most opportunity with their athletes. The most latent opportunity, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to be in the US market. So it's
Mhm.
either UFC, who initially were created stimulating their athletes to create social media
Yeah,
content and actually rewarding athletes for the biggest growth and the highest engagement rates. So clearly that was innovative and groundbreaking.
it's a great one.
I would say the NFL is also fantastic. When we look at the Netflix series of quarterback or running back, they are fantastic. Tom Brady, of course, is an icon in this space, but there are so many. When from the day of prime time,
Yeah, Deion Sanders.
yeah, Coach Prime, saying, I am a product, right? That was him at the time who actually said Deion Sanders saying I am a product, and the name is Primetime, right? He positioned himself to
Yeah,
be a product.
very intentional.
So clearly the NBA is up there as well. It's got to be, and with Showtime going, being the most expensive player to ever make a trade.
Mhm.
It's like the MLB couldn't be far behind. It's just I'm less exposed to the MLB.
Totally.
But yeah, I'd probably say the NFL.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think like a lot of fans, like, maybe even myself included, wanted to hate Tom Brady, wanted to find a reason not to like him because the guy just wins, and yet his social media is so endearing and he's so self-deprecating that you kind of can't help but enjoy him in some ways, and it's frustrating as a
Yeah.
fan who as a Raiders fan who wants to hate him.
I think if you look at Tom Brady, then he has done a couple of things extremely well. You have the series of the Religion of Sports, Tom versus Time, which was documenting his. Of course, eventually he was going to be all to play, but it was not going to be that year. And
Right.
everything he did to continue to play, which was a fantastic series. Then he made The Man in the Arena, which he also co-produced. So he was very invested in hiring storytelling talent
Yep.
to actually tell his story for him, much like Kobe Bryant did when he made the Dear Basketball film, which
Yeah.
earned him an Oscar for best animated short. I mean, that is setting the benchmark for athlete generated content at the Oscar level. It's like
Totally.
you don't have to be perfect, but you can be, right? This is exactly.
Uh,
I mean, I think Brady won Emmy awards for the content that he generated, I believe, but Kobe won the Oscar. So
yeah.
that's the benchmark for athlete
Great
generated
call
content
out.
right there.
Next question for you, Thomas. Tell me when and how does name, image, and likeness (NIL) become valuable for European athletes, and what can U.S. collegiate athletes kind of learn from them, and vice versa? Like, how does NIL become a thing for growing, emerging amateur athletes in Europe, I guess, and juxtapose that with the college experience out here?
Yeah, I think that it's very, very difficult to compare the NCAA to a European or international sports environment. It's simply not doable, right? We don't have it. We
Yeah.
do have semi-professional athletes because they compete in sports that simply do not generate that level of income,
Mhm.
right? A professional level of income. They just do not earn a lot, but there's no restrictions on eligibility or NCAA rules. It simply doesn't exist. And the whole NCAA is a little bit weird, right? It's like we're acting like this
Oh,
isn't a multi-billion dollar industry,
right, right.
while everybody understands it is a multi-billion dollar industry, right? It's a little bit weird. Of course, these athletes get an education. Of course, there's all kinds of sophistication and history that is connected to the NCAA, but we do not have the equivalent in European sports.
It's almost like you
Uh,
are a 14-year-old prodigy that gets signed by your country's best team and academy. Like, when do you start thinking, okay, I can now monetize my NIL?
yeah, so I mean, this is sophisticated in the sense that clearly people aren't products. They are not created to service markets. They are created to live happy lives, right?
Mhm.
So it's difficult to say that athletes are products. They aren't. Having said that, the theory that applies to marketing products to a certain extent also applies to marketing people, to branding people. So the same principles apply. When your name becomes a product name, when your name becomes a search query, you need to own it. So when you Google your name, what are the results that come up?
Yeah,
Are those platforms that you own, or is your name effectively owned by someone else?
yeah,
So, step number one, I would say if you have the ambition to build a brand and to become a brand or to position yourself as a brand, is own your own URL.
good first step for
Step
sure.
number one,
Yeah,
position yourself as a brand. And then the question is, what do you want that brand to represent? What is it that you want people to find? What is it that you want people to know? And then you get back to distinctiveness, consistency, and visibility.
yeah,
So, step number one is actually acknowledging that your name has now become a product name. And that if you Google your name, the question is, who owns your name? Is that the media companies that cover you? Is that the rights holder that employs you? Or is that you?
I like that.
And of course,
Really, really insightful.
I'm in the camp of saying the athlete should own his own name.
Damn straight. All right, Thomas, almost done here. We're down to our food question. Always ask our food question. Tell me, if I go out there and we hang out, we break bread, we geek out over a meal in the Netherlands, in your town out there, What's the best meal to get? Where are we going to get it? What are we eating?
Well, the Dutch are known for many things, but they're not for their cuisine. So if we keep it simple, we're eating poffertjes, which is sort of a pastry. It's mini pancakes. They're super cool. We're eating stroopwafels, also fantastic. But
Oh yeah.
other than that, we're eating an American burger or buying you a steak. It's easy.
I'll take it. Hey, we'll have some stroopwafels for dessert and a burger. I'm good with that. And good
I look
company, of
forward to it,
course.
Neil.
Number
I look
nine.
forward to it.
Hell yeah, me too. Tell me your most memorable campaign from your time with Adidas.
Well, I think the one that I would label, I'd say, is I once created a Twitter handle for the World Cup ball. It was called @Brazuca. And what we created was a personality for the match ball, and we turned the ball into a baller. We gave him a little bit of an attitude. And the idea
Oh,
was that this ball would meet all the players. It would be at every moment, it would be at the center of attention. Everybody's watching this ball. And actually, it was stolen or inspired by a Super Bowl activation. There was this Super Bowl where Beyonce was performing at the halftime, and then the lights got killed. If you remember that,
yeah.
the lights stopped working, and that's when there was this viral sensation that was called @Super Bowl Lights. This was just a guy on a couch that started this Twitter handle right on the spot, and it was tweeting, and it actually had a sense of humor. And at one point, it tweeted, "Only Beyonce can turn me on," which was kind of cool,
Good
and
line.
that inspired this World Cup Twitter handle. And at the end of the World Cup, we had 5 million followers. And
Wow.
that is to say that if you position it right and if you actually create a sense of personality and a sense of humor, then even if a World Cup ball is capable of generating a following of 5 million, then so can you.
That's fantastic. That is a great one. I love that anecdote. All right, last one for you, Thomas. Before we get to your shout outs, you get to host five athletes, past or present, for dinner. You get five athletes to join you for dinner. Who's at your table?
Um,
Tough
I
one.
would say, yeah, I would say, well, let's start with Johan Cruyff because,
Got
I
to.
just mentioned him. He's
Oh
such an
yeah.
inspiration. I would say Michael Jordan.
Perfect.
I would say, well, Michael Jordan and Johan
Got
Cruyff. That would
to.
be pretty special, wouldn't it? I would love to meet LeBron. I've never worked with him. He
There we
seems
go.
like an amazing leader and a very strong businessman. So I think that would be super cool. Um, I would invite Cristiano,
Yep.
and I would love to add Kobe. I think that would be a lovely
Hell
dinner,
yeah.
wouldn't it?
That would be one hell of a dinner. I would pay to just to see that. That.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, we got
Right.
Joel Crook, we got LeBron, we got Jordan, we got Kobe, we got Cristiano Ronaldo. Perfect.
It's too male. It's too male. Kid, I want Simone Biles at the table. I want Naomi Osaka at the table. Like, because
You
this is
need a whole banquet. You need a whole banquet where you can just invite hundreds, a couple hundred
that's
people.
it. That's it. Yeah, yeah. Why not Megan Rapinoe? I think she could teach those guys one or two things about efficacy
Hell
and
yeah.
social impact.
Hell yeah. And
Anyway,
she can bring her plus one too. She can bring Sue Bird with her. So you got two and one there.
there you go. Yeah, yeah. Fantastic.
Well, Tom, tell us your social media all-star followers. Tell us anyone, it could be anyone, who they are, what platform they're on, if or it can be just a blogger or podcast or whatever. Just tell us who they are and why they're following.
Okay. Well, I will not mention War Jazz Eagle because she was just on your podcast,
Yeah.
and everybody says her anyway. I would love to to mention Zoe Skaman.
Yeah.
Skaman is with a C, right? Zoe Skaman. She is an agency owner. She has an agency called Bodacious.
Mhm.
She is a great thinker, a great mind, a great brand strategist who informed a lot of the ideas about multiplayer brands that I just mentioned, but also the power of fandom.
Yeah.
So I love her thinking. I love her work. She's very, very gracious and she shares a lot of her thinking and a lot of her work. And I think she's a very inspirational voice. So I really admire her work.
That's a great one. Yeah, the her writing, the science of fandom kind of is just it's really fascinating. So it's a great call out. And how about you, Thomas? Where can we find you as well as the athlete brand business and the athlete brand book across across platforms.
Yeah, well, the best place to follow me is probably LinkedIn. I publish a monthly newsletter called The Influence Insider. Are you already subscribed?
I think I am. Maybe I'm not. I need to check because I haven't been getting it.
Well, I think I would celebrate it if you would subscribe. So
Hell
that is
yeah.
a monthly newsletter filled with athlete branding insights. It's on LinkedIn. My name is Thomas Van Schaik. Probably LinkedIn is the best place to follow me. I publish there quite frequently, and I look forward to connecting with everybody, each of your listeners. So I'd
Oh
love
yeah.
to. I'd love to collaborate.
And check out the Athlete Brand book on Amazon, anywhere you find good books. And I'm sure there's going to be multiple courses and colleges set up with the Athlete Brand book as their textbook. It is truly like remarkable, and I've enjoyed every. I mean, I haven't even finished it yet. And I'm enjoying every page of it. It's so good, and I really appreciate you coming on and lending us some of your wisdom and knowledge and insight today, Tom. This is one of the best conversations I've had in this podcast. This is awesome.
I really appreciate it. The best place to find the Athlete Brand book is probably the athletebrandbook.com. It's the easiest URL I could come up with. So that's probably the best platform to find it. And yeah, I thank you for this opportunity. I loved our talk. And please let me know when you're in the Netherlands. I'd love to buy you a steak.
Hell yeah, I'm all for it. Just such great stuff being able to speak to Thomas today. So much good information from him. He is full of knowledge, full of insight, can really pick his brain all day and talk strategy, talk different ways that athletes are headed. Really, the present and the future is athlete brands, driving sports interest, driving so much value and revenue and opportunity out there. Check out his book as well, as we mentioned, The Athlete Brand. It truly is like a textbook for a course. You will learn so much and be able to cite it. I know I've enjoyed it myself. And follow him on LinkedIn, subscribe to his newsletter, all that good stuff. And we cannot thank Thomas enough for coming on the podcast today. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horwitz. Hit me up on Twitter, NJH287. Also on LinkedIn, connect with me there. The website, dsmsports.net. The other website I would love for you to check out, slyk.co. Create a collection and hit me up, and I will help you add to it. And that's what it's all about, collaboration. And until next time, I'm signing off for you today, Neil Horwitz, for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.